and we're sitting in the studio. What did you guys think of the Björk? I tried to introduce you to some culture, something different from Iceland. Some of you didn't even know who that was. What did you think, Beige?
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Kind of interesting. Back in the 90s, she had a
word for that.
As far as Icelandic music goes, I actually like another band from Iceland better than Björk, and I'm sure you don't know who these people are.
Oh, this is a nice fast way to transition to get him talking back
Yeah.
about what he wants to talk about.
Right, yeah.
No,
I'm just trying to expose you to
Culture.
You're
culture
trying to expose me.
and better music.
What did you like? Sorry.
Of Monsters and Men.
Oh, I have heard of that. Okay, but I can't place the music.
That was
All right.
last week.
But
Yeah.
you've never heard of Björk.
I've heard of Björk.
You have
I just
heard-
haven't
okay.
heard her music before. I've never actually
on
like
the radio or
anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an interesting flavor that I listened to back in the 90s. She had an album that came out called Debut, and I thought it was interesting. Probably too much conversation up front about Björk. Look, this one is going to be about
Björk.
just the way we're going to just discuss Björk. I hope you're out there, Björk. The three huge fans. No, this is
wait a second.
this is going to be about the symbols that people are taking a lot of liberties with, emojis, emails, vernacular that people use, things that we've noticed in communication that maybe deserve a little bit of analysis. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for being here. Heroes
Of
humility, 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 humility. Humility. This is not a charade. This is real. These words you are about to hear are coming from real humans on a mission to save the human race from itself. Buckle up while these delusional heroes of humility, aka hoes, attempt to right the wrongs in everyday human behavior. And we're back. This is how we do it. Segues now that I try to make kind of happen in a way that seems organic. I noticed when we were doing a little video earlier that some of the hosts kind of change a little bit once they realize that they're being recorded. Would anybody care to venture an analysis on why that happens or how that happens? I think I have an idea.
Okay.
I think it's just because we're going to do another topic that might touch on this, but it's just the idea of, it's like we've had some buddies, we've invited them to come on the show and they don't want to because they're in their head a little bit about it. And when you get on video, you're just more aware that you're being recorded. So I think that's probably a little bit of what happens.
Yeah, especially when somebody's surreptitiously recording you and you don't realize it, and then you realize it mid-recording and
That
you're like,
bathroom
what's
camera.
going on? Yeah.
I've always been fine
That
with people.
voyeuristic thing's kind of a little creepy. A little creepy.
It
You
might
get
be-
that.
Certain angle in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, it might be
turns
part of
me
my sadistic that I don't mind being recorded. Like
I mean, I'm going to just start it off and say Pierce is very much in his like tortured Hollywood director
I was yelling
mood
at you guys today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like very Tarantino
Yeah, nobody
type
was
today.
cooperating.
Nobody's cooperating. He's just getting frustrated.
It took way
and then
too
I made
many.
a comment about his accoutrement
go.
on his
Yeah, yeah.
head. Which,
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys said you were going to be here about 10, between 10 and 11. Well, I talked to Red about that.
Oh, I
And
got
then-
here like 15 till
Yeah,
10,
you got
actually.
here
I
early.
was-
That's
I was
all right.
very
Actually, I was psyched to have
Extremely
Beige show up early so we could hang out a little bit. But I had just woke up about 9:10, and the thing is that the instructions say 2 minutes of the conditioner. You don't. If
Can't rush
You've
it.
got to follow.
Do you set a timer on your phone? Do you count down in your head?
Doing
Just kind of
the-
ballpark it.
I'm not good with ballparking time. I'm really bad. I should be using timers for things when it affects other people. So just a formal apology that I wasn't ready when you got here early, Beige. I just didn't ready. I was going to be ready about 10:30. Anyway, not really exciting topic, not part, but what we're going to try to do is discuss some of the weird, funny, crazy, odd things that people are conveying with just a emoji. I mean, maybe we can get into some gifs and stuff, but I wonder what the forefathers or even people of yesteryear, people that used to use language in a more poetic way, what they would think if they read and saw the way we communicate now. Would they think that, oh, wow, society is really doing well, or would they worry that maybe we were regressing in some way?
You're saying like, can we rewrite the Declaration of Independence to just be
With
using emojis?
Yeah, exactly. A bunch of eggplants and peaches would not have conveyed the same kind kind of feelings that you get when you sit down and read Thomas Jefferson. Even like a letter he wrote, or Benjamin Franklin, you look just at the letters that those guys wrote, it like stirs something in you.
Well,
you know?
plus, not just like the usage of the words and, how poetic the language is itself, but also the handwriting, too. I feel like handwriting is horrible now. At least when we were growing up, you had handwriting in school. They would give you pieces of paper and you would practice all your letters and cursive. We practice cursive. My handwriting sucks printing wise, but when I sign, I feel like I'm like signer of the Declaration of Independence. That's my signature. It's very ornate and old school because that's just how they taught you how to sign your name back in the day.
And it is a small window into what an egomaniac you are, that you feel that your signature is equivalent to, John Hancock or Thomas Jefferson.
Wow.
No, but that's funny. I know what you mean. And when I sign my name, it's in cursive. Most people probably don't know what cursive is anymore. And you were taught in elementary school, you were supposed to be writing in cursive, and it's a lost art. I mean, I don't know if there's a benefit to that, but...
I mean, I know if I slow down when I write, my handwriting's a lot better, but if I just write and try to write quickly, my handwriting's pretty atrocious. But it's funny because sometimes I'll write and people will be like, "Oh man, that's great. You have really nice handwriting." And then other times I'll write and people have no idea what the hell I put on paper. So
that's not a nice that's not a compliment you get anymore nowadays, where people kind of make a comment about your handwriting, because you so seldom hear that. So that's good.
Right.
I wonder if that was like your grandmother or something. But it's nice to have somebody.
He's coming out with guns blazing today, dude.
Well, I got my feelings stung a little bit earlier.
That comment about the little handkerchief on your head, dude. That stung. Apparently,
okay. Look,
man.
let's just get this out in the open. I mean, here's the issue.
If anybody's ever seen the box of raisins, the red box, I forget the name brand, but basically the woman on the box is wearing like a handkerchief on her head. That's basically Pierce right now.
It's very rude. I don't know if that's rude to the lady on the box or if it's rude to me. Look, here's the thing. Just so you know, anybody that games or wears headsets of any kind, when that is rubbing and sitting on your head, it's very damaging to the follicles and the things that help your hair be healthy on the top of your head. So what people do that have longer hair is sometimes they have pillows that are made out of like a silk material. And this material keeps your hair from being damaged when you lay on it. So these headsets pull on your head. Now, I don't want to go into this too much because I know it sounds like I'm giving you guys, a hard time, but this is just not something you have to worry about. So I put...
See?
I apologize. Yeah. Now I'm going to edit
Guns
that
blazing.
out.
Shots fired again.
So I just put this on my hair to protect it. Anyway, let's move on. This is not something that we need to get into too many of the weeds. I know it helps explain, but I feel like sometimes when you're being bullied, it's good to go ahead and just identify the elephant in the room, which is, yes, I have a silk thing that goes between my head, and I'm not a savage. I think we've really detoured from the emojis and the improper usage of symbols to convey what we think. I had a thesis in college that I was going to write when I was going to get my master's, and I didn't because I just started working. What it was going to be about is, do the symbols that people use to convey messages, typically language, if you speak a different language and you use different symbols, does that somehow change the way you think a little bit? If you're unable to express your thoughts in the same way as another culture, does that somehow act as an impediment or just a different variation of how you would think? You're having to use, certain cultures don't even have certain words or meanings in their vernacular. I think the Greek have different words for agape or love. So they obviously are very in tune with that concept, but I just wonder if that somehow plays a role too. And now that we've kind of diminished our communication to just these little hieroglyphics, which we're all supposed to kind of have a mental glossary as to what they mean. I don't know. Did you know what eggplant meant or the peach? I mean, I wonder, have you guys seen this with your kids? They have understanding of what these emojis mean.
If I'm seeing eggplants and peaches on my kid's phone,
That'd
I'm
be
probably
a concern.
yanking their phone. I know what that means. I know what that means. That's become like, there's certain emojis that are like, have become so widely used. I guess they're just part of common pop culture now or something. So, I mean, obviously those two things are
easy ones.
Yeah, are fairly easy ones. I mean, they're associated to like sexual stuff, obviously. So, yeah, if I found that on my kid's phone, I'd be pretty alarmed and probably pissed off. There are sometimes even the smiley faces, right? There's like 50 different versions of that face.
Right.
And some of these, like somebody will send you something, you're like, what the hell does that mean? I don't even know what that expression is, And so a lot of times if I don't really know what it is, I'll go into Google and I'll just be like, all right, what does this mean? Because you don't want to ask the person, what what are you talking about? What is it? It's just kind of embarrassing that you don't know what that is. So I'm always the type of person try to be self-reliant. So if I don't know something, I try to figure that out on my own. And that even goes back to like the emojis and stuff. I'll just do the research on it.
Well, it's funny because the whole idea of communication is to be able to convey a message. And now it's taken you longer to get your message across because somebody on the other end is having to Google the message you're using.
Right.
And maybe this is not the case with the folks that are very familiar with these emojis or how they would. But what if you did want to just refer to a peach in your conversation and you send that? And now it could have different meanings.
Yeah, you're like, I feel like eating and then you just put a peach there.
And then they're like, oh, he meant that he wants to eat his butthole.
Right.
Or
and you're
her
like, no,
butthole.
I actually peach. Yeah.
Yeah, you really
or maybe
just
you
wanted
want
to eat
some
a peach.
eggplant parmesan, you know?
Or maybe he wanted some eggplant with his peach, and now it looks like you're putting a peen inside of a peach.
that's kind of a weird combo to eat, but I mean, it could be done.
Red, if you saw something like that on your boys' now, does he text a lot? Does he use his phone?
Yeah, he does.
Do you want to reveal his age to the audience, or should we keep that redacted for...
We'll let him guess.
He's Red is very young looking for his age, by the way.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
But anyway, sorry.
Wow, he's showering you with compliments today.
Wow.
That's nice.
No, he hasn't said anything bad about my do-rag on my hair. Sorry.
No, my kid, I will say, to me, like there's a comedic, I don't know, I guess I always look at the funny and when you're texting, or I guess maybe that's what I look towards. But I always think that there's a time frame. And like when you're looking up GIFs or something like that, it's like, if it takes you too long to search through all those GIFs, it kind of loses its punchline. Because if you get somebody that's really, really good and they drop one on you and it makes it, to me, a lot funnier. But the one thing I've noticed is we have relatives spelling when you text has really gone down, and with emails too. Most of the emails and even now our cell phones will do like spell check as you're typing. But I know my biggest thing that I fault on is sometimes my fingers are a little large, and instead of hitting like spacebar, I'm hitting B, or there's a word space or a word like only will be missing the L. I try to, but not always, go back before I hit send and at least look through it and make sure it makes sense. But I know one of my relatives, she likes doing the voice to text. So you will write back, oh yeah, that was great. And then you get seriously like a whole bunch of stuff. She's funny because it just goes, and it's like a sentence that just she just hits send. So
it doesn't say a little something too about someone's confidence in how they perceive that everybody else has to just do their best to get on their sheet of music. I've wondered that too. I've seen people that send messages that way, and you just see a string of characters and symbols, and you're wondering, how did they just send that with total disregard or no inhibitions that somebody else on the other end may not understand what they're saying? They haven't even gone back to proofread it.
We have a relative that has been known to send in a group, they'll put out a text, and I'm not trying to be a literary snob and go, oh, that wasn't capitalized or whatnot. But when you're reading the message and I don't know what that means.
I need a helper.
So when we've actually asked, when we've been in person with, hey, sometimes you put stuff, that person just didn't care. Like spelling, it didn't matter. It didn't.
It's kind of a slap in the face to everybody.
Well, to me, like if it's important enough to say, sometimes you should.
I like that.
You should at least be accurate and be deliberate with what you want.
I'm curious to ask this. I hate to. Well, hopefully this doesn't get you in trouble. And who is this again to you?
This is a relative.
Okay, so we want to just leave it at relative.
Relative of mine.
Okay.
And she's been, whether it's on emails or text, it's been pointed out by multiple. It's not just like, oh, it's my pet peeve on her.
Okay.
It's been pointed out multiple times, like, what?
Is she late to functions or people are waiting for her? Does that seem to be... Not to profile her, I'm just...
Well, I will say she does beat to her own drum. Like, if she has a party and it has a certain theme to it, it's like, to hell with what everybody else has input.
Yeah.
It's her like little fiesta, whatever it is. Yeah, I guess, I mean, if we can get... Maybe that's part of delving into people's,
personality.
personal,
I think so.
Like...
The way they write, the messages they choose to send, but that they don't edit it or...
I mean, I'm sure, like, if you guys are texting your boss or texting via, like, say, a work thing or email, you usually proofread it, right?
A little more careful.
Yeah, and then, again, like, your reply is probably not with an emoji, unless, if you're tight with your boss or something like that. That's maybe something that you guys are on board with. Other than that, it's kind of funny. Usually you talk a different way with your friends versus your professional relationships.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and half the time there's certain things that you want to text, a word that you might be trying to use, and the texting application or whatever doesn't recognize that word. So it will say that's a misspelled word. Profanities are an example of that. It's like, I don't really want to talk about ducks as much as you think I do.
Oh.
So when I'm saying that, I'm not talking about a duck.
Damn.
So don't...
now, could you use a picture?
Don't autocorrect a duck all the time.
I know,
you
it's
know?
frustrating. Could you use might be interesting, a way to use the emoji of a duck if you wanted to tell somebody to duck off. Could you just say duck?
Yeah. I mean, that might be too complex for them to get.
I will say this, and I'm not trying to put too much haterade out there, but I own 2 different brand of phones. As you can imagine, you guys own the same brand of phones from what I remember. And my work phone is a one brand phone. And to me, the word prediction when you're texting is like completely like, what the hell are you guessing when you're typing out? And I'm not, you guys can tell if you're listeners to this show, I'm not a doctorate in the English language by all means. Like, what are you guessing? What your word prediction is completely off in comparison to like when you're typing an email or on my other branded phone, it actually guesses my words correctly. Like, I think this new, and it's not an AI phone yet, at least as far as I know.
That's what I was going to say. I think with AI, that's going to get even better because it's going to look at your patterns and learn what you generally type and predict based off that maybe. Or so I think as AI progresses, I think that's going to get even more accurate.
I've noticed on my one phone, there's certain phrases that I usually text. Like one is like, you guys always see it. I'm on my way, or I just left the house. So that's a common text I usually text to friends or when I leave. Well, my phone from work never guesses that phrase. My personal phone, as soon as I start typing the one word, it predicts it. And so then I can just tap and get the message out.
Interesting.
Or there's some phones, and I don't know, this must be like if you're texting somebody with a different operating software than the phone that you're on, but you can go back into messages now and edit what you said instead of doing another text that's like, oh, I meant this. You can go back and actually edit the original message to convey what you meant to say.
And it changes what they see?
They see, yeah.
Oh, wow,
It'll show up as
that.
an edited text.
Is that on an Apple thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
So I think if you're texting like Apple to Apple, iPhone to iPhone, you can go back and edit your text message as opposed to, oh, I really meant to say this, you know?
Not peach to peach, but apple to apple.
Yeah, because if you don't do it, then people are going to be like, what the F are you trying to say, dude? And you're like, oh, God, this phone's so stupid.
But I haven't used that feature yet, but it shows that it's been edited.
Yeah. So it'll change the original. One. But, you know, I think the English language is weird, right? Because I think it's very explicit and communicative, and there's a lot of words in the English language that we can use to express things. But the general public has whittled that down to probably like 20%, if that, of all the words in the English language. If you go into Microsoft Word and you type in a particular word or something and you look up the thesaurus option for like synonyms for that word, there will be a whole one word might have 20 different things that you can say to convey that same general idea with a little tweak here and there. So like he discovered this or he unearthed this or something. Like there's certain things that like it generally means the same thing, but there's a little bit of a difference. So the more mastery of the English language you have, you might be able to convey your idea a lot more clearly. But it's just, I feel like a lot of times in society, we've just gotten dumbed down to the point where we're using like 20% of the words that actually exist out there.
Well, I get it, because like if you've ever read a legal document, this is English, you're reading something, you could read a paragraph in legal terms, and you're like, I read the words clearly, but I have no idea what the hell that even means.
Yeah, they're trying to sound too cool for school, man.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why when you say, oh yeah, you know, use layman's terms. Well, that's like, okay, we've whittled that down now to the bare minimum. And it's kind of shameful because, I mean, and this is not a partisan thing. This is not a political thing, Republican, Democrat, whatever. But you just look at the leaders today, and I don't care who it is, and you look at the leaders from the 40s, 50s, 60s, their ability, their mastery of the English language and their ability to convey ideas and speak publicly is just completely different than it is today. It's just much more poetic, much more artistic, much more clear and
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, you got to think too. Most of the time, if you're talking about, you know, presidents from like say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, they probably had a speechwriter or somebody that would, and there was.
Well, and they do today too. That's the thing.
There's not a need of immediate. I mean, and I think that's the big difference back then is there was something officially put out, kind of in our realm. you put something out that it's time is taken to edit it, to people to look it over. Where now we're all expecting, if we see something on the news, we're expecting 5 minutes, like a tweet or something like this.
Well, I will say the expectation it's a microwave society versus like an oven society.
Yeah.
You might throw something in the oven and it'll be ready in 2-3 hours. Now you want it in 30 seconds.
Instantaneous gratification and patience. There is no patience for certain things. And I wonder if that's harming some of our skills in these areas, because it used to be where you might have a little more patience. I bet you even years ago, there was more readership of all kinds of things than there is now. People would read more. And now it's got to be delivered in such a succinct way that I think we've actually lost some of the art of
I'll agree with that too, because you think about it, like when you send somebody a text, most of the time people, I would guess, what's a comfortable response time? Anywhere 5 to 10 minutes that somebody responds back to your text.
Good point, yeah.
And if you don't, then your brain might start thinking like, well, why aren't they answering my text? And I know for me, I take sometimes a little bit longer to respond, because if I'm talking with somebody or I'm doing this certain task, I don't constantly look at my phone to answer back, unless like, okay, I know I'm running late at work and I was supposed to be home at a certain time. Then maybe I'll throw a text out there, or if I see a loved one call me because they're waiting for me, then I'll interrupt it. But I'm not usually one to just, I don't have a smart watch and then I'm looking at, got a text, I'm texting back immediately. I'm not good at that.
Well, it'd be a tricky thing, because if you were speaking with somebody and they just kind of walked away and then came back 10 minutes later to respond to whatever you said to them, that'd be kind of weird. But this is why texting is in this kind of different area where you can't necessarily have those kind of assumptions going into it. There might be some other things going on.
But who wants to live their life that way? Me personally, I don't want to live my life that way, where the expectation is, I text you, you got to text me back. Like, I don't like living my life like that with all those expectations on me.
Well,
it's just
you're tied to your phone. If you see any little alert, I got to check it within a couple seconds, because if I don't answer back, I'm rude or I'm not considerate.
I think I want to say it's like Elon Musk or somebody said, basically, we're already androids. It's just that we can put the phone down sometimes. Yeah. But we are already it has fundamentally changed who we are as people. This device that basically connects you to everybody else and is part of this overall network. The fact that you can put it down from time to time doesn't necessarily change the fact that the expectation of you as an individual has changed drastically in the last 15 to 20 years. I mean, we're probably 15 to 20 years from them putting that shit into your brain. I mean, in all honesty, now you can just put it down. You know,
bad word too.
Oh yeah, explicit. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think you're right though. Like, could you imagine, instead of having to actually type the buttons or voice texting,
you just think it.
You think a thought, and then you can in your brain tell it to send.
Well, it's getting harder and harder probably to have that kind of context that you're describing, Beige, that you want to have, where it'd be okay if you don't respond, or you don't respond within a certain amount of time.
But there's people like me, I'm defiant. I don't care if that's socially acceptable or not. I'm not going to be behest to society. At the end of the day, you're an individual and you get to live your own life. If somebody else expects something else of you, then that's fine. But do you have to be at the whim of those expectations all the time? Do you have any autonomy anymore? Do you have any...
Probably plays a part in who's texting you too. I mean, there's probably different people that
not necessarily. I mean, I do that with my relatives, everybody else. It's just who I am as a person, and I don't like society infringing their expectations on me to, you have a phone, you need to respond ASAP, you need to do this. No, I don't. Sometimes you have to push back on that stuff. That's the way I try to push back on technology, because everybody's like, technology is great, it's this and that. Every single time there's a technological advancement, there's a balance to that. It's not 100% positive. And we have to realize that there's certain things that you need to take into consideration. Social media, is that 100% positive? No way. But everybody probably thought it was when it first came out. You don't realize the consequences until much later on. And so you have to start looking at things with a more critical eye of the way things are, and not just be behest to whatever society is in your mind demanding of you. You know?
No, and you and I had the same boss that this happened one time, and I kind of remember your face when you were going out of the country, and the boss goes, unfortunately we have a work phone, And at behest, we're supposed to answer 24/7. And even if it's the weekend and you're, quote, not regularly working, that you're expected to respond within a certain amount of time, even though you're not, that day held responsible to answer the phone, that if the phone rings, you're supposed to respond, right? But when you went on vacation and out of country...
on personal vacation, not on a work trip, personal vacation.
Personal vacation. The boss goes, hey, do you want to get international plan on your work phone? And I saw your face and I just laughed because I know that Beige he's going on vacation to disconnect. And then the boss is like trying to keep you connected. And it's like, I'm even going across the ocean to a foreign country so I can get away. And the boss, because in his mind, I mean, you got to think.
Because I can't fully relax if the expectation is to still be connected.
Oh,
you have to disconnect to be able to fully relax and enjoy yourself. At least I do.
Yeah.
Maybe other people are different. That's fine. But the way I process things and the way I deal with stuff mentally, I need to be able to fully disconnect.
When you try to leave the office, there is an art to writing those emails so that you feel like you would accomplish a lot of different things in one message. There's going to be people that treat this context differently. The way you feel about text is obviously not going to be the same as somebody else, and vice versa, and there'll be nuances all in between that. So when you're writing this out of office email, sometimes I try to write something that walks the line between those two different maybe orientations and thought, so that somebody can realize that just because they're not getting a response in a week, I have every intention, but I make it clear that I won't be looking at these messages until this date.
Absolutely.
I used to, when I first started, I would be like, I'll have periodic access to check emails and do this and do that.
This guy's a hard charger.
Yeah,
he's
and
really still paying attention to his email, even though he's on the beach.
And I did for like the first 10, 15 years. And what you realize that it's exhausting, dude. It's exhausting. So I think the more you learn and the further you get in your career, you're like, you know what? This out of office is going to be a lot simpler. It's going to be, I'm out of the office until this date. If you need immediate assistance, contact this person. Period.
Well, and
like, leave me, like, I'm not checking my emails. I'm
No,
not putting any of that in there. There's no expectation. And you have to realize you as an individual have the right to set those boundaries and to say, no, this is the way I feel. And it's like, I'm not going to impose my boundaries on you. I ask for you not to impose your boundaries on me. If your expectation is this, I've already explained this is the way I am. It's not personal. It's not this, whatever. But I'm not going to impose my expectations on you and feel a certain way about you because maybe you have a different way of doing things.
Maybe at the
I have a different way of doing
bottom of your
things.
email, after you write whatever rude thing it sounds like you're saying, you could just write, this is not personal at the bottom, and then everybody would be happy.
I mean, if you take it personal, you take it personal.
Oh, you could write that at the bottom too. That would be better.
No,
if you
no,
take it
I
personal.
try to stay professional, but
Yeah,
I try to minimize. I try to make it clear there's no expectation that I am going to be attending to this while I'm off. I'm off. We all have vacation time. We all have annual leave. You are entitled to that time, just like anybody else is. If you allow people, they will overstep their bounds. They will do that, and they will always apologize, right? And say, "Oh, I'm really sorry for bugging you on your time off." No, you're not. Like half the time, what you just called me about, there's no reason why you couldn't have waited till next week. No reason.
There's probably,
and then you're false. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I don't buy it.
I agree, but I've gotten in trouble before because then I was kind of lackadaisical about the out of office notification. And I had somebody from another office who was waiting for me, but in their mind, they had no idea I was off that week. And so their response was to then start including my boss in the email responses about why my lack of communication has been kind of off-putting to them.
ouch. When somebody sees somebody, that ups the ante, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you're kind of like, well, your boss knows
Especially
you're
if it's your
off.
But Wow.
But in other words, you're like, okay, you're already up in the ante. How about, did you call me to see if I answer my phone? There's partial steps going up to that. But I think...
Well, and then there's accountability for that person because now you have to realize that you potentially damaged this relationship by overstepping your bounds there and basically trying to throw somebody under the bus.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah.
you could have done these other steps. You could have called me. You could have texted me. You could have whatever. But you send one email and I don't respond to you in a timely fashion and you start moving it up the chain, that's going to adversely affect our relationship. Just is.
Oh, yeah. But I've realized how important, especially in this day and age, where if you are out and you want to be away, definitely put the out of office in. And it's crazy to me because I know with my kids, sometimes we go up in the mountains or we go to a lake that, there isn't a lot of cell phone signal,
You're not in
right?
range, yeah.
And people will get upset. If relatives will get like, hey, I was trying to reach you all day. Like, is something wrong with your phone? And it was like, dude, I was just up in the mountains. There's no cell phone signal. Sorry. And it's strange at how, like, as soon as you get back to signal, how you want to look back at all your connections and go, oh man, you feel bad that you were out of range, but you didn't miss being out of communication at the same time.
See, but I think that's damaging. I think that's damaging to your psyche, maybe even on a subconscious level, where there is that expectation and you are so tethered. And the expectation is just so much that you are just reachable all the time. Like, I think we were born in a pretty unique time because we got to experience life like this before all this, and life like this after all of this, with social media, with text, with smartphones, with all that. We all lived a life that didn't have this, and now we live a life with this, and we can see the difference. And I do think that mental health-wise, people were a lot better off before this expectation. You could go up someplace without signal, and you didn't care that somebody was trying to that wasn't even a thought in your mind. Now it's like, oh, what did I miss? Oh, as soon as I get into signal, when are we going to get back in range so I can see what emails I have and what, like, do you like thinking like that? Like, I don't like thinking like that.
No, and I will say, like, to me, I will say I have security cams set up on my phone and it alerts me to certain motion, right? And I will say that's one thing. Wait, I haven't felt my phone go off, or what's going on with the house. It is kind of like a crutch that you go back to. It's like, damn, can I go without that if I'm without signal? Because for me, it's always, hey, something going on with the house.
Yeah, it's like you've rewired your brain.
Well, I have something really funny I'll try saying here in just a second, but
go ahead.
Interrupt the series.
Please.
There is like term that, we do use when you want to, somebody mentioned earlier, this is way back. What I've tried to do here on the podcast is I'll write a word down because I don't want to interrupt, So I wrote down layman, and I thought, well, when people say put this in layman's terms, what if we had a better word for that? Because it makes you sound like a degenerate bush league kind of weirdo, savage layman. Put it in savage terms so we can understand it. Nothing against any savages out there, but we use these words. I mean, just make it so that there's more clarity and
dumb it down.
Yeah, that's even worse. Right? Dumb it down for me, the dumb.
Well, I don't know. When I will say, talking with my wife, whether it's actually in person or via text, she will use the terms she, her, him. I don't know if it's my age or what. I'm finding it hard to keep track of the he, the hims, the she's. I go, use their name, because if she's talking about 2 or 3 different boys, and she's like, yeah, he went there. I'm like, which he? Like, I'm losing track.
Well, and you're really used to being more aware of that because that's something in report writing that's a big deal.
Is that where we're more sensitive?
I think so, yeah, because in report writing, we've had similar work, it has to be really clear. You'll even use it to,
you don't want to be ambiguous.
Yeah, you'll even use it to a fault because you'll use the person's name more than once or twice in the same sentence. The other thing I thought was interesting here, people overusing the exclamation point, especially in text messages. Did they really mean to yell that, or are they trying to be real sarcastic with that question? Why is there an exclamation?
Well, I think the reason why is because it's very hard to convey tone in text.
Yeah.
If you say something, people can be like, that guy might be a sarcastic jerk, but if you put an exclamation point at the end of it, to me, that means I'm sincere and I'm like excited about this or something, as opposed to like, I'm not being sarcastic. Oh, geez, thanks, as opposed to like, oh, geez, thanks. Because like, if you said it the first way, oh, geez, thanks.
Would you, if somebody told you, like, was responding to something you said, and in their mind, they thought they were being funny, but they did not use an exclamation point, would you receive that as like,
no, they should be using a smiley laughing face if they think they're being funny,
right? Because otherwise you could be considered, oh, this guy's being a
but then he might look like a jerk because he's laughing at his own sentence. Well, who does this guy think he's so funny?
No, but I think you're right, where you're having to convey the message and you're like, well, I know what I'm thinking, but will they get what my tone is?
Well, I think the onus on text is on the sender, not the receiver. So
you're right.
Need to be clear.
Yeah.
And
Beige doesn't want any responsibility as a receiver. He
Oh, is that
he
what
will
we're
respond
learning?
in weeks. He doesn't have to
See,
have any
here we go.
understanding of anything.
Here we go.
He can be
This
at
is
the
what
top of a mountain.
This is what
or
I'm saying. This is what I'm saying about society's
he
expectations.
could be in the
here.
bathroom, or he could be on a mountain. It doesn't
Dude,
matter to him.
I would be happy on a mountain in a shed with like a beard down to my feet.
He
Like
just
I'd
takes
be fine with
a
that.
urinal to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
That way he could be in both settings.
That's the way I am.
No, that's good
I'm
stuff.
just very,
I think
you
it's
know-
always important to understand the person you're sending a text message to. And if it's somebody that you're not familiar with, then there's probably going to be a little bit more incumbents on you and the receiver to recognize that and respond accordingly. If you can't understand, if I don't know, this is how this guy is and this is just what it is, it makes it a little easier. And I think that's what eases these little errors.
Do you
that can
feel the
occur.
obligation in text if somebody says something they think is funny, if you don't respond with a ha ha,
A little bit.
is that
a little
man, this
bit.
guy,
It's a good one. Yeah.
this guy just bombed here.
Yeah.
He knows he just bombed.
I don't
on
like
this
people
text.
to feel bad if they try to be funny because I'm all about funny.
And they're bombing.
But I won't do it with insincerity. I have to put something. So what I'll do is I'll usually give them just a HA.
So like
if it's a bomb.
The Underoos comment, you really thought that was funny this morning?
I did, but I only gave it a HA with an exclamation.
Yeah, you only gave it one ha, not a ha ha.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, there's stages.
It's at
man.
50%.
Now,
funny.
if you get a double HA, that's a good one. And if I put another exclamation out of it, then it's like, oh, this is Pierce is laughing.
He's actually laughing out loud, literally laughing out loud.
And I very seldom will use LOL, but if I use that, I hold my LOLs with a lot of integrity.
That's why an
you
LOL from Pierce, that's well deserved.
Yeah, you
That's-
know.
Yeah,
you
because
know.
I will tell you, my sister-in-law will almost when I look at my wife's text message with her sister, my sister-in-law will usually end a phrase with LOL, and I go, it takes away from the actual LOL if you use it all
There's
the
no
time.
magic
right?
in the LOL
Right,
anymore.
yeah, I don't believe
kind of
you
world
really
are we
are
in?
LOLing. Are you
I went
really
to the store.
LOLing?
I went to the store. LOL. I'm like,
Why is that funny?
What is that? That doesn't need an
When
LOL.
somebody starts out a sentence LOL, to me that's just
Or I went to the store! Exclamation point! Like,
yeah, like it was a victory, right?
how many. I mentioned this in the last one, but we were talking about doctor visits. But when you just get stuff even from people that are supposed to be like professional, remember your appointment tomorrow and it's got 2 or 3, or confirm your appointment tomorrow and it's got 2 or 3 exclamation
2 or 3
points.
eggplants.
That's it might be going. Well, those are the kind
Whoa.
of appointments you have. I don't know. I don't have
Struck
those
a
kind
nerve.
of
Struck a nerve.
At your urologist,
massage parlor. Yeah, there's
aka urologist.
same difference. Well, they're in the same building. Why is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move this over.
Oh yeah, we almost had a
Jeez.
But yeah, there's
critical incident over here.
we don't have this on video yet, but Beige almost dropped his cup. Yeah,
Just water, folks. Just water.
Well, I made there was some things I see in emails that I think are also people trying to look too shot out of a cannon with their use of acronyms like FYSA and All-Con.
For your stupid ass.
It's just way
That's
too
what I
much,
assume
man.
it means.
Way too
Like, this
much.
guy's a jerk.
Yeah. Who is this guy? I think he is talking to
Yeah,
me.
he just called me a stupid ass.
Yeah, he just called me a stupid ass. For your information, you stupid ass. Yeah, it's
No,
just,
but if you're sending the email, isn't it for your information to begin with, right?
it is. You're
Right.
You're already
Yeah.
getting something. You know, it's for your information. It's going to be your intel. Why do you have to say for your situational awareness?
Or
It's ridiculous.
all-con.
All-con, yeah. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Anybody who writes all-con at the very beginning of the sentence, they've already lost some credibility.
Well, and
man.
you're sending it to these people. Of course, they're already receiver of the message,
Yeah.
you know?
They're already on the con, you know?
Right.
They should know they're part of the con, man.
You know what's crazy? I'll bring up something that you probably would have never thought would have happened 15 years ago, where we've actually seen it, say an email from work that gets sent to everybody, whether it's nationwide or just in the whole region, right? We've all seen it before where there's, say, somebody in a bad mood or disgruntled about something, and they will reply all with something less than professional.
That's like the office version of hitting the nuclear button. Like, that's like you've decided
They've
it's
lost
just
their mind.
Yeah, we're just gonna go nuclear on this.
But you think about it, like 15 years ago, you would have never thought somebody would have lost their job or been disciplined for a reply all smart aleck comment. Nothing like berating, but just a smart aleck comment or something to the effect where they were maybe making fun of what the email was about. And we've seen that nowadays.
But that's happened. Yeah,
that's
that
happened
happens.
before. And you're 15 years ago, you probably would have never even...
People that have had visits at their house after they send an email that's completely erratic, which is interesting because you do the math on the inhibitions and cognitive devolving that has occurred for somebody to go off and send a message like that.
Yeah, you got to
They've
not
lost
be in
their-
a good place mentally to go there.
Yeah,
in
they're
the
sitting
first
in a
place.
dark
Like,
room with putting lipstick on and crossing people's names off a list if they're sending you some of these crazy emails.
But do you think it might be part of like going back to what Beige was saying was there's not a you can't disconnect on a daily basis. They're always expecting you to respond. If 10 p.m. you get this email and
I sent you an email at 10:30. Why didn't you? Because I was sleeping, dude.
And
Am I
was
supposed to wake
watching,
up every 2 hours and check my phone?
I was watching Bjork videos patiently in my
and when you start
having
thinking,
weird dreams.
Yeah.
and when you start thinking about actually how people live their lives, you responding to your boss's email at 11 p.m. when you're out with your boys drinking beers will be a different response than say 11 a.m. that work day when you're in a work environment.
Well, and I feel like if you are responsive like that, you want to say that you're doing a good thing and good on you for doing that, but you're also setting precedent. Now it's like, Red. Well, why didn't Red respond? You responded last time. What's going on?
And that's
because
your
now you've set the expectation now.
And now your
you know?
relationship from now on, he's like, well, if Red doesn't respond,
Yeah,
with this
he's
amount of
just
time,
blowing me off.
Yeah, he's a complete a-hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forget FYSing this guy. He can go suck it and I'll tell Alcon.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's what I would do in these messages. Sometimes when I'd see something like this from somebody, I would use a bunch of them. So I would be Alcon and FYSA, so I put both. And then at the end, I would put respectfully. I always like the respectfully one. And I would use all these things that kind of annoy me. And I wonder on the other end of it, does the guy get that I'm being a tiny bit just sarcastic because I'm using them back?
What about instead of respectfully, yours truly?
Oh, geez.
Is that kind of creepy?
Wow. That's
too creepy. That's the creepy guy in the office that you never want to upset, yours truly.
If you ever deal with people from, say, other offices or other areas of expertise or something, then they send you emails and they become overly technical and they start using acronyms that are specific to what they know. And you're like, dude, what are you talking about? I have no idea. It's common knowledge for what they do. And it's, dude, I don't know
Everybody
what you're
better
talking
get on
about.
board with what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they're using these acronyms and you're like, I have no idea what WHB L5, whatever this is. And the expectation is oh yeah, well, WHB, right? And you're like, what the hell?
That happened to me when I was sending messages to IT people, and they would send me stuff. I'd be reading their message, and I'd see the word dongles and other stuff. How dare this guy assume that I'm supposed to understand this? It was put it in, dumb it down for layman, man.
Right,
Dumb it
dongle,
down for
and if
layman.
you say dongle, I'm like, my mind goes somewhere else.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
like,
going
what
to
are you?
peen and peaches and the dongles and the peaches and everything else.
Yeah,
dude.
I think the eggplant
Every
means
other
dongle,
which way.
right?
Yeah, it could. Who knows
Yeah.
in some other society. But do you guys think that this is actually changing the way we think a little bit? Like I said in my thesis, that there's a possibility it can alter the way that we...
I do think that, when we're talking about emojis, right? Where does that stem from? That stems from the cell phone companies generally, right? That's how we use most of our emojis is via text.
Mm-hmm.
So that's from Apple or Android or whatever. Well, Apple and Android, those are international companies. Dude, you could take somebody in name any country in the world, and half these people probably have iPhones or they have Android. So that alone has... Now the guy in this country over in Asia somewhere knows what an eggplant means because it's on his iPhone too. And that's just become an international language because everybody has access to the same emojis.
I'd like to imagine that somewhere in this world, there's a beautiful place where somebody would see an eggplant or a peach.
And they'd be like, yeah.
And they would just be like, that's an eggplant and that's a peach.
Well, there might be some 90-year-olds in some Greek island somewhere that still consider that to be an eggplant.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And I'll tell you another thing. So I watched Tombstone last weekend, and I got to show you guys before we leave. I got a Doc Holliday, an exact replica of what Val Kilmer looked like in that movie. And I got a little book and I did a deep dive into Tombstone. I know this is way out, but the thing is I was treating myself, and where the hell was I going with this?
Holy
Well, when you watch that movie and you hear the words I'll be your huckleberry.
Right. What if
Or-
that was an emoji?
It'd ruin it, Or what if you did, you're a daisy if you do. And I thought, well, I'm going to start using daisy that way, like an actual picture of a daisy. So I started researching these words and looking to see how they were used in the 1800s. And it was interesting, man, because we've lost those words that were a very poignant and in vogue for that time period that had very specific ways of transferring a message with a lot of umph. Now nobody ever uses that anymore.
Right.
But at that time, the daisy, the way he used it, was a part of their vernacular.
Right. And so words always get redefined. People take words and then they redefine them to mean something else. But there's an importance of tone and who's conveying the message and the visual along with the audible in the conveying of those messages. So I'll be your daisy. What if it's like, I'll be your daisy?
Right.
And then it's like,
I'll be your daisy.
Right. That's like a romantic thing,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this guy wants to
No.
be this dude's daisy,
Beige wants to be the daisied.
But if you see the movie and you're like, oh, it's Val Kilmer and he's talking crap,
yeah, he's talking
then you get the point of the message.
Yeah, you're a
But if you're
daisy
just
for
like
dude.
reading this and you're like, this dude said he'd be another guy's daisy, like what does that mean? So that's what text is almost. You're taking
Longer.
it's just words. It's just there's no tone, there's no nonverbals, there's no nothing.
Yeah.
It's just simpling that down. And again, that's the simplification of communication in our society, whether it's our use of words or how we convey those words. Everything's just getting much more simpler and restrictive in the way we
I
communicate.
wanted to talk more about Tombstone, but I guess
Well, I don't know.
Did you?
No, that
Go
would
ahead,
Be hard. That would be
Pierce.
hard though, because like you
No,
said,
you didn't get the hint. I can
those
tell.
terms aren't don't have to carry the same meaning. Like you said,
JK.
it could be back then. Can you only imagine? It goes in the same terms of talking with somebody from a different country that speaks the same language technically as you, but they have different sayings and meanings
Yeah.
that they use. But I remember talking to somebody about something and they were from a different country, and when they said a phrase, what the hell? I looked at really confusing. To them, that was a normal phrase they use.
Or
I know.
slang, right? Like slang. There's something, even in Spanish, I think this happens a lot, where in a certain country, there may be a word for this, and that same word exists in another country that speaks Spanish as well. But when you say that word in that other country, it means something completely different.
I
Oh,
know.
yeah.
I know.
You know?
I know. Let's have a spelling contest. Oh, I still want to talk about Tombstone.
I was like, what is going on
A
here?
buddy of mine, we were going to go. No, I'm going to say his name. Okay, we know him as Cool Hand. I was psyched because we were going to go to Tombstone when Val Kilmer was coming, and he was supposed to go there, but then he had those issues with his throat, so he didn't come. We were so disappointed, and I was all psyched because my thought was everybody was going to go there with like Tombstone memorabilia and stuff for him to sign with his image as Doc Holliday on it. I was going to go wearing a flight jacket, a total onesie from Top Gun. And then I was going to have like maybe an Iceman shirt underneath it. And I was going to have him sign something. And my buddy, Cool Hand, was like, dude, you're not doing that. You can't. He's like, I won't go with you. He's like, I'm like, dude, this is our chance to meet Val Kilmer, dude. You have him sign that stuff from Tombstone. I'll have him sign this, whatever. We were all psyched, but we never went. Anyway, I digress. But that was
that
another
always
Tombstone
makes
stuff.
me wonder because like he's a well-known, he's a celebrity.
Yeah.
Does that make him feel good that people like the character? Like, because I'm sure
I
that
would
each
think so,
character
yeah.
would have different meaning to different people. So
Right.
imagine wherever he goes, he's going to a Tombstone event and somebody shows up in Top
Yeah.
Gun gear. Is that throwing shade on Tombstone, or is it?
I think
I
it
think
would just
he'd call security.
I think and this is why Cool Hand was concerned, because he would be standing next to the guy wearing the flight jacket, trying to look like, I don't know what this. And so with his aviator sunglasses on, and I'd go up to Val Kilmer and I'd be like, "That's right, Iceman," or something ridiculous. And he was like, he just didn't want to be a part of that.
yeah, you
you
didn't
know?
want to be associated with that.
And in a way, if I had any shame or inhibition, which will be on our next topic, that would bother me, but I don't. And that's why, to me, it would have been so money to go up and I think Val Kilmer would have appreciated it, but I'd love it. And I can just imagine all the other Tombstone
Val,
nerds.
if you're listening,
Yeah, Val, you just know that I love you, man. And I think you were awesome in Tombstone. In fact, I did do some research on Doc Holliday, the person. But dude, Val Kilmer was Doc Holliday to me. And in so many ways, obviously they make it more interesting, but gosh, he killed it in that movie. Has there ever been a better portrayal of anybody ever in a movie?
You know, when I think of Val Kilmer, honestly, one of the movies that kind of blew my mind was when he played in The Doors.
Oh, yeah. But I didn't like that guy. That's the only problem. I like Doc Holliday.
But when you think about it, because like, I always argue with this with my wife when we're watching certain movies and she's like the antagonist. I just hate that guy. I go, he's playing the part that he's supposed to do, right?
I know.
Yeah, it's actually great acting that you hate him.
Yeah, because
he's doing a great job.
The new Joker that came out, right? He's the antagonist. He's the bad guy.
Right.
And he has a dark thing about him. And my wife hates that kind of.
Yeah.
She's a Hallmark.
Who's that?
person.
Joaquin Phoenix. Right?
Yeah, and she doesn't like that. And she goes, my wife already knows what I'm gonna say. She goes, don't even say it. I don't want to like that guy. And I go, well,
I'm
he's
kind
doing
of on board.
the job.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with your wife, though. I'm like that, too. I want to. His portrayal of that character was it wasn't like all good or all bad. I don't mind liking characters that have a dark side, but he did it in such a way. And I think that deep down, there has to be a visceral, compelling thing that you like about a character, even if they're supposed to be this awful person. It still helps if there's something compelling about them. And for me, and maybe this is a little bit like your wife, if I can't like the person, then it's like, come on. I mean, that guy played in the Gladiator. And I remember he was also very good at being I hated the guy, you know?
Yeah.
He's very good at, and if you've ever seen Joaquin Phoenix, right? His name's Joaquin Phoenix. If you ever seen him in an interview, he's easy to dislike in an interview. So
it's also part of his personality. You're saying that.
That's what I'm saying, dude. It's coming from a deeper place. And what I'm saying is Val Kilmer, when you see him act, he's a likable guy, dude.
See, but to me, there's a lot of people in Hollywood that if I delved into who they are as a person, there'd probably be a lot of people like, I don't really like that guy. So I try to disconnect myself from who they are and the art that they do, because you get to a point where it becomes so restrictive. It's like, can't enjoy this, I can't enjoy that, because it's like, well, I didn't like what this guy said about this, or I didn't like that or this or whatever, and before you know it, it's like, damn, I don't like anybody, you know?
Yeah.
So you gotta be able to separate yourself somewhat.
Well, unfortunately, like you said, absolutely, especially characters that are like Val Kilmer that have continued to keep acting and had such a long career that because I think of I'm a Val Kilmer fan myself, and I like
so cool, dude.
The Saint, that was a good one, man.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm trying to remember that one. I don't remember. But one of my all time favorite was the L.A. Heat. Where they have the shootout,
he was even likable as that part.
That's what I'm saying.
They were
totally
like
felt for
bank
him.
robbers, right?
Yeah.
Dude, you totally felt for him in that movie, man.
Oh yeah.
When they're doing these awful things, they're stealing money, they're shooting people. Val Kilmer, you're like, I can't dislike this guy, you know? That's a sweet
It's just
movie,
like Patrick Swayze in Point Break, right? I liked Patrick Swayze in Point Break.
Yeah.
He was a bad guy, but he was like, man, this guy's actually...
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's got the likability. He's got the it factor.
Exactly.
Bro.
I will tell you
To me, the it factor is that you're liked.
This was my problem with Patrick Swayze. I grew up with a little sister who watched Dirty Dancing. And I can no longer like Patrick Swayze, even if he plays a good role I might like. Because, to me, in my mind, it brings me back being forced to watch Dirty Dancing a million times. And that was, to me, my little sister's movie. So, but I mean, like Roadhouse, and I mean, he's done other great movies. I will say my favorite Patrick Swayze is The Outsiders. And to me, that goes back to way back. I don't even know what we used to actually have to read that book in grade school.
I remember Pony Boy.
Yeah, Pony Boy. Remember that? Like, I thought it was and it was before a lot of these guys were big celebrities. One of your favorites, Tom Cruise, is in that movie before they were even big, right? It just throw you back to like, wow, this is such a great movie. And plus it had a great meaning behind it. And to even now, I don't know if they have that pop culture, at least in schools, where you learned. It was so dynamic to learn those things and read the book and then watch the movie was our reward in grade.
I think we did that too. I think we watched the movie in class as well.
I don't know what school you guys are going to. I had to read like Macbeth and all this Shakespeare crap, and then I would
Did you get hit on the hand with a ruler and stuff too?
I got hit on.
Sorry.
By the
Damn.
by the
It was an
guy,
all
by
boys
the
school.
janitor, by the guy janitor.
Well, if there's one thing we've learned, there's always haters. And we want to really thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of Heroes of Human. We've covered a lot of important information.
Oh, wow.
A quick summary. We talked about exclamation points. We talked about text and how inappropriate and weird it is that our symbols have devolved into just caveman talk. We talked about Tombstone, which is one of the best movies of all time. If you have not seen it, please do yourself a favor. I don't know who there would be, but thank you for tuning in again. We love you guys for being here. We hope we made you laugh a little bit. This is Pierce signing off with
Beige.
Red.
Take care, be cool, be kind. All right, I'm glad we had this time together. I think it was special. Let's not get weird. I'll go our separate ways. It's over. It's time to go. Drive safe. If you are interested in being a supporter of Heroes of Humility, you can do so by giving us a review or following us on YouTube or any of our social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and by clicking the subscribe or follow button that allows you to listen to this podcast on the app you're using. And that's it. I think that's enough, don't you? And then if you have any input or you'd like to leave us a comment or send us something on a DM, we read that stuff and then we would consider it for a show. If you'd like, we'll mention you. If you have an idea that you'd like us to tackle, our next show will be coming out in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening. Take care.